And
Pentagon,
I'm fucking livid that we are stuck in the timeline where Alex Jones is right. As I said, democracy is a system that reinforces authoritarian ideals.
Why aren't the Amish afraid of COVID? Because they don't have TVs.
They were posting some crazy shit like months ago. Remember that?
You brought a freaking guillotine.
I did.
Being a victim of a tragedy doesn't make you an expert in public policy. Somebody telling them to stand up for their rights is disinformation. Kind of works.
Oh no! Okay, no.
You want to make the world a better place? Have some babies and raise them to not be stupid.
Man, governments are not going to like this shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, activists, and people of the internet, thank you for joining another episode of O'Donnell for Liberty. As always, I'm your host, Justin. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, turn on notifications, and keep up to date for future shows. And if you enjoy watching and listening, you can be an early supporter of the program by following our link to our Patreon in the description and signing up to join the production team. If you want to keep in touch between shows, follow me on social media and join our community Discord channel where you can chat with other fans about the show at any time. All those links are right below in the description as well. First and foremost, we want to give a shout out to sneckswag.com, your favorite home for Liberty merchandise. Don't have anything new for you today, but every Friday there's going to be something new to be showcased. You can head over to sneckswag.com and pick up all your favorite Liberty merch today. Tonight we're going to be talking about New Age politics, New Age libertarianism, how to reach outside your echo chamber, and having fun while spreading the message of liberty. We're going to take some questions, so make sure you hit the like button, leave some comments, tell us what you think in chat, and give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, activist, messenger extraordinaire, and former Libertarian candidate for Vice President of the United States, Spike Cohen. Spike, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, Justin. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know we've been trying to get this lined up in the schedule for a couple months now. You're a busy freaking guy. So I mean, you are a busy guy. You're all over the place. Everyone sees you. You're at every convention now, it seems, and even in between conventions, you're running around doing all sorts of work for Liberty and the Libertarian Party in your free time. But I feel like 2 years ago, nobody had heard of you. You kind of came out of nowhere when
I did come out of nowhere.
When you got tapped to run as Vermin's VP candidate and just kind of took everything over by storm. How did that come about? Like, what possessed you to come from nowhere and just like take over the Libertarian Party?
So this is part of a long-term plan, and what happened? Basically, I wasn't involved actively or openly anyway with politics until about 3 years ago, three and a half years ago, and I was involved in my business. And then after I was diagnosed with MS and had some really life-changing decisions to make, I realized how much longer I've reached a point where I don't have to work anymore for money. How much longer do I want to chase dollar bills when I'm being told that, at that point we hadn't gotten it under control. And so they're talking about how much longer I'm going to be able to see, how much longer I'm going to be able to walk, how much longer I'm going to be able to breathe unassisted. And I'm thinking, well, if that's the conversation we're having, how much longer do I want to spend just chasing money if I already have enough money where I don't have to work to be able to live? And so that really led me on a path of, I spent the better part of a year working on trying to figure out exactly what it was I wanted to do. So towards the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I thought, well, I think what I want to do is help spread the message of liberty. That's where my passion is. I've just only really been doing it, privately in my own social circles. And so that started with me doing my podcast. And then after about a year, just over a year of doing that, I ended up having Vermin on the show. I got to meet him. He and the team ended up reaching out to me and asking me to run for his VP. And it's just kind of all gone from there.
Yeah, I got to say, it was shot. I've known Vermin a long time, and growing up in Massachusetts and being politically involved in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, it's really hard not to know Vermin.
Everyone knows Vermin there, yeah.
I played mini golf with him in his backyard and see him at Pork Fest every year. It's super fun. But you just struck such a stark contrast to him, and especially for someone coming out of nowhere with no name recognition, and a lot of people in the party just had no clue who you were. I myself was very down on the Vermin Spike ticket for the longest time because I'm like, I don't know what they do. If they win, I don't know what the hell we do and how we bring this to larger people. And then it wasn't until the vice presidential debate when I remember I was sitting there with a few friends and we had it up on the TV. We were watching the vice presidential debate that Stossel had done. I think it was Stossel. And your performance in that debate, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Why isn't he running for president? like at that point, I'm like, all of the presidential candidates that just bored the shit out of me, and where the hell was this guy the whole time?
It's funny. There have been people that are like, oh, you should have been the 2020 pick. And I'm like, well, no, I shouldn't have, because I wasn't running for that. It's funny. So when Vermin asked me if I wanted to be his vice presidential pick, I was like, yeah, sure. And because whenever I jump into something, I always look at best case and worst case scenario.
Right.
I had a talk with my wife, Tasha, about, if I get nominated, here are the kind of things that happen. So we had that conversation. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to go in, I'm going to have fun with Vermin, I'm going to help with his campaign. I'm also going to show that there are better ways to campaign and message. Right. And people are going to go, that's fantastic. Larry Sharp for VP or something like that, that they would pick someone else. And by the time Larry actually got in the race, and then later when Justin Amash got in the race, I thought, okay, these are the shoes that are dropping. Larry's going to probably get it. He's the most popular person in the LP. Justin Amash probably going to want his own person. Then Justin Amash dropped out. Turned out Larry really only did it to help Jim Gray because he's loyal to a fault, and Jim Gray's always been there for him. And so then I'm like, oh wow, I'm going to win this thing, aren't I? And that was like in April. And then that shortly after that happened, then I got the Radical Caucus endorsement. The next day I got the Mises Caucus endorsement. And then I thought, oh, am I going to win this thing? And then, Jacob Hornberger endorses me, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's actually going to happen. So it was really in April that I thought, I was always running to win, but I always kind of thought like, yeah, this is probably what's going to happen. So honestly, up until that last month, I was just as surprised as everyone else.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with Predict It. It's an online political betting market where you can bet on the outcomes. Yeah. At one point in time, me and a friend, we were sitting downstairs at one of our clubhouses in our community center, and I just logged on to Predict It, and they had opened a market for the Libertarian nomination. Okay. But it had such low volume. Like nobody was trading on it, because everyone who normally trades on Predict It, it's like, what the hell's the Libertarian Party? And they had no clue, no information. And Vermin was trading at like 2 cents to win the nomination. And I just looked at how low the volume was. I looked at my friend, I'm like, hey, William, you want to make a lot of money real quick? He's like, what are we doing? I'm like, I just bought $500 of Vermin Supreme shares for 3 cents. I'm going to sell them to you for 4 cents. I want you to sell them back to me for 5 cents. And we drug up the price until the point where the entirety of Predict It started panic buying Vermin Supreme shares.
Wow. And
we dumped them for like 20 cents. But at the same time, like, I bought Larry Sharp shares very early on and just held them because I was just assuming Larry was going to win.
I would have too. I would have. He's the most popular guy. Even now, he's one of the most popular guys in the LP. He was just at that point. He was only just over a year off of his gubernatorial race in New York, where literally, he had a nationwide team working with him. I would have guessed that too. I would have hodled for Larry Sharp as well. I was shocked. I wasn't shocked until April. But I by then I'm like, oh, okay, because at that point I'm calling delegates every day, and I'm like, oh, they're all already saying they're picking me, and I don't think they're blowing smoke, because libertarians don't tend to pander like that. I think that I might actually have this thing. So
yeah, I managed to piss off a lot of people in the Predicted marketplace on convention day, because immediately after the presidential nomination, Larry Sharp was still trading at like 93 cents to win the nomination. And immediately as Joe wins, I texted Larry. I'm like, are you going to accept the nomination or not? He's like, nope, not for Joe. I went and sold all my shares, bought Larry Sharp at 7 cents, and bought a bunch of U shares to win. And it just pumped. And then somebody comments, because people on Predict It were watching the convention online, trying to monitor their bets, and somebody realized I had been speaking and recognized my name, and they just started commenting in the threads to like, this O'Donnell person's insider trading. I'm like, I just commented like, Martha Stewart did nothing wrong.
Exactly. And you know what else, man? If anyone were really listening to Larry, he had been saying, I mean, he did at one point say, well, I'll run, my nomination is separate from Jim's, but that ended very quickly. In the last 2 months, anytime anyone would really press him on it, he's like, I think that I think that Jim's the only one with the viable strategy, that one state strategy that they'd win New York and then whatever else. Like, he was all but saying, I'm not going to do this if it's not with Jim Gray. And to anyone that would listen when the cameras weren't rolling, he was saying, I don't even really want to do this. So it wasn't exactly that was a best kept secret by any stretch of the imagination. You know, frankly, if you're going to invest like that, maybe you should like watch Larry and see him saying, I don't really want to do this.
Yeah, it just blows my mind how people were so willing to bet money on something they knew nothing about, because the reality is people know nothing about the Libertarian Party. And it's unfortunate people know nothing about the Libertarian Party until you look at like the big picture and realize that your average Republican knows nothing about the Republican Party. Your average Democrat knows nothing about the Democratic Party. The biggest debate and kerfluffle in libertarian circles the past year has been corruption on the LNC. But I guarantee you ask your average person who the chair of their political party is, they couldn't tell you.
I do that all the time. When libertarians come to me and go, are you worried that all this infighting is going to make people hate libertarians? I said, no one knows anything about libertarians. And then I'll say, quick, don't Google it. Just look me in the eyes. Don't look at your phone. Who is the chair of the Republican Party? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm not 100% sure either. Who's the chair of the Democratic Party? And they're like, I don't know. And I said, I think it's Tom Perez, but I don't know that either. These are the parties that are actually in charge. They have tens of thousands of elected officials between the two parties, and no one knows who they are. No one cares about this except you and me and other fellow libertarian nerds. And I increasingly don't care about it.
I know who the vice chair of the DNC is, but the only reason I know who he is because he lives like 2 towns over from me. He's a raging asshole, and I've made it my life's mission to harass him on Twitter. And every time he gets on Twitter to complain about libertarians and free staters in New Hampshire, I just post links to that time he was investigated for child trafficking and child pornography by the FBI. Yeah, they don't care in the other big parties how corrupt their leadership is.
That's a perfect example. Possible child pornographer. Nah, he's fine. Is he doing his job okay? All right, then that's good. No one cares. No one cares. Yeah. No one cares. Like it is. And all I care about for the LP, because I know if you're going to open it up to questions or whatever, people, and I'm happy to answer them. But here's my thing. Here's all I care about with the LP. Can you keep our ballot access? Can you file whatever paperwork you need to do so that when I identify good candidates and we're doing groundwork to get candidates, running for office, that they don't have to now trip over themselves just to do the paperwork to be able to run for office? That's all I care about. I don't want messaging from the LP. I don't want, I keep hearing the LP needs to lead. The LP needs to sit the hell down and let the candidates and the activists do the work. I don't want pencil pushers doing our messaging.
Yeah, it's incredible. During my 2 terms on the LNC, it was right at the time where the Mises caucus started to become a thing. It was like right after I joined the LNC, the Mises caucus kind of started, and over the next 4 years became a big thing and a force to be reckoned with in the party. But their constant push was the LNC needs better messaging. The LNC needs better messaging. And I kept asking them, like, okay, how? Like, I remember asking Josh Smith, and Josh is a good friend of mine now, but I remember asking him when he was running for chair. He's like, I'm running to fix the messaging. I'm like, do you even know how the messaging is done? Because a lot of people don't. It's mostly us just retweeting and copying and pasting from candidates.
Yeah.
So run better candidates. Find better candidates, recruit more people to the party. The board, in my opinion, as somebody who served on the board and served on the LNC, should be charged with absolutely nothing but making sure the bills are paid, the lawyers are paid, and the lawsuits are filed on time.
Yep. That's it. That's all I want from it. I mean, I would like to have a good rapid response team on the social media, because there does have to be a public face for the Facebook, the Twitter, and whatever. That's it.
Sure.
That's it. This whole I also think that the LP should be running ads. I think that they should be running ads, but that should be decided how that's being done. Even the way that this current thing is being done with this vaccine mandate ad, I'm no longer involved. We're working on our own thing, but it's being done by committee, and that's why it's taking so long. And it needs to be done. If the LP has a budget that's already set for, we're going to do X number of ads, and they're going to be something that can be done within, 96 hours, within 100 hours, within that week, well-presented ads. And we even have a little bit of a budget set aside to, buy some airtime and pay for social media placement and stuff like that. But let it be directed by actual candidates and actual activists instead of by a committee. I mean, we don't believe democracy is a good way of doing things. Why are we letting that be the way we do everything?
Right. They just need to pay Dan Smoss.
Yes.
Like,
oh
honestly,
God. Yes.
Like, how much money did the LNC raise? How much money did the Libertarian Party raise on a direct targeted fundraiser to do an ad regarding COVID?
I think
And
it was like 30 grand. Yeah.
we still don't have an ad regarding COVID. However, the LP just announced they were going to do that, and 24 hours later, Dan had a 2-minute and 20-second spot published featuring you, Dave Smith, Ron Paul, Eric July. It was incredible.
He took a, I think, minute and a half or 80-second or whatever, took like a minute, roughly minute segment from me on Kennedy, and a couple little clips from Ron Paul, Dave Smith, I think Eric July, I forget whoever else, and turn that into a freaking trailer for a blockbuster movie.
Right.
I've been telling when I was still working with LP, when I was still involved with this video thing, I told him, I'm like, hire Dan Smaltz, hire him. And I didn't get off of it because they didn't hire him, but I was no longer involved when I saw that basically they're going to go in a different direction, and I hope it's a good direction. And it wasn't about who they hired. It was that the vast majority of the money that was raised was, we want Dave Smith, Spike Cohen, and Justin Amash. And now the LP is essentially saying, I believe what they're saying is, well, we're not going to have any of them. And instead what we're going to do is have people that, are being directly affected by it or something like that. Okay, great. At this point, I hope it goes well. I hope it's a good thing. I hope that the people that donated all this money are happy with it. But I came on based on what the vast majority of donors that I was seeing were saying. But all that to say that, Dan, give the money to Dan Smolt and have some of the most prominent people in the party be the ones that are directing it. The elected officials, the candidates, the activists, let them be the ones doing it. And the LP could be doing rapid response stuff and run an insurgent campaign 24/7, 365.
Yeah. Instead, well, we got it. People criticized me because I commented on the LP on the Twitter post where the Libertarian Party is asking for money for it, and like, this is exactly what you guys have been demanding. Are you going to donate? I'm like, no. Honestly, I don't trust them to. I don't trust the current incarnation of the LNC to have the priorities straight to produce an ad that I'm comfortable contributing money to run. And so, like I said, I'm not going to donate in the first wave. When they produce an ad and I see it, if it's something I like and I love, I'll donate a lot of money to put it on the air.
To help get it on the air. I get that. I totally get that. When I had people messaging me saying, talk me into doing this, or, convince me to do this. I'm like, I'm not going to convince you to do it. I understand the skepticism. I hope they do a good job with it. I know that Dan Smolt's not the only good video person out there. I hope that they do a good job. I hope that whatever direction they're taking it in is a good one. I just, I think moving forward, I think that the way that comms should be done at the national level should be, let the biggest stakeholders in the party be the ones that are directing it. I think that this current way of doing it is a good way to end up with a committeed message that takes a long time to get out. Thankfully, this issue is timely, will remain timely for quite some time. But there are other stuff that is only a hot topic for a couple weeks. We need to be able to get something out there quickly. But this also points to why I say it needs to be decentralized action. And I'm very soon going to be releasing something that I've been working on over the summer. But the long and short of it is, we're going to be supercharging immediate, localized, decentralized human action, people working together in a voluntary way, in a rapid response way to things that are on the ground, and not waiting for a state affiliate or a national affiliate to jump in to get involved with it.
Yeah, and it's not even like you need to do too much. And like, the state affiliates, I think, should be leading a lot, like locally in their areas. Again, not every state's different. Texas, maybe your county affiliate. Yeah, Texas, maybe your county affiliate. Here in New Hampshire, the state affiliate is plenty local enough to lead.
It's a small state. Yeah.
But like, I look at things like the national party is taking so long to get any messaging out about COVID. LPNH did one of the best like guerrilla marketing campaigns I've ever seen by accident, where they couldn't get enough money to run TV ads, couldn't get enough money for like freaking insert in the newspaper that goes to 1 million people, but they could get $500 for a billboard. So what are you going to do with a billboard? Nobody looks at billboards. Make it provocative enough that mainstream media has to cover the billboard. We ended up with Biden's fascist vaccine mandates can still be stopped. LPNH.org to learn more with Biden with a Hitler stash.
And so with $500, how often did that get covered?
Constant in the 24-hour news cycle for 3 weeks. Nonstop. Blew up the website. Membership has doubled in the past 6 months in LPNH of doing the outreach and reaching out to people because people are so fed up with the Republican governor supporting mandates.
Well, and that's the thing. And so I'm going to say this. So Republicans have occasionally done a good job tweeting that they're against this while they continue to vote to fully fund it. And while many so-called conservative constitutionalist governors are lining up left and right to do the same thing that their Democrat counterparts are. Now, for any of the people that just saw that and they're like, I don't like the Hitler messaging. I actually am not a fan of the Hitler messaging either. So take your $500 and do the same thing. Go do it the way you want to do it. And that's a perfect example. Like, we don't necessarily have to all be saying it the exact same way. You go do it that way. Someone else with $500 does it their way. Someone else does it their way. But as libertarians, we are cumulatively putting out a message, and it is the same message just in different ways, and it's going to connect with different people. And I'm a fan of the reason that the LP is such a fucking mess is because of everything we believe about centralized power, forced association, and democracy. And it literally is playing out in front of us. Like, we say all this stuff. You know, we are in it's not a forced association, but it's a coerced by the state association, in that we're a bunch of anti-staters who are being forced to get involved in statist electoral politics. And so as a result of that, we're kind of forced, not within the party, but from outside forces, to be into this sort of association. And so what are we doing? And because it's democratized, we're constantly fighting over who's in charge of it. Like, we're literally proving that democracy sucks within our own party. It's like Lord of the Rings, where we're all fighting over the ring of power, except in this case, the ring of power is made of used toaster strudel wrappers, and it's, held together by glue and tape, and it has no power. We're all fighting over the same dumpster fire to be the king of the dumpster. And it's ridiculous. And it just proves that this centralization in democracy always leads to power struggles. If instead we go into our separate corners, human action, immediate, decentralized, localized action with people we actually want to work with. I don't care what your caucus is. I don't care what your affiliation is. Let's go out and do positive things across the country at the grassroots level. That's always going to work better, because it's all people that want to be there, are excited to be there, and aren't jockeying for power because we all want the same thing.
Yeah. So I think that harkens on, like, something I wanted to touch on, transition into, is I'd said on Dan's show, Dan had myself and Masha on his show to talk about some of the drama going on in the LP. And I had the realization, I yelled at him, like, it's mind-blowing to me that the power struggles within the LP are so vicious and over so little power. Like,
none. Almost none. In some states, it's literally, if you're judging political power by number of elected officials, there are quite a few states where they have no power at all, and they're even fighting tooth and nail.
Even the states where they have elected officials, like we have elected officials in New Hampshire, they have elected officials in Maine, they have elected officials in Wyoming, Pennsylvania has a fuck ton of elected officials, Florida has a bunch of elected officials. None of these states does the party actually control its ballot line. Its ballot line is a function of state law. The party can't actually take people off the ballot and say, no, you're not a libertarian. It's whoever collects the petitions and convinces the Secretary of State to put them on the goddamn ballot and says, I'm a libertarian. They're the people who lead your messaging. They're the people who lead your image. All you're fighting over is the keys to a Twitter account.
And to have to do the paperwork. You're fighting to be the guy who has to do oh God, I was supposed to file this yesterday. Let me rush ship it and add the extra postage for the extra cost to return receipt request. Like, I mean, all like, this is what you sign up for. And I have always, people like, do you support the Mises takeover? And I'm like, I don't care if Mises takes over. I'm not for or against it. And I say that as someone, I joined the Mises Caucus, the Facebook group, the day after it was founded. So I'm one of the original members, but I don't care if they take over. I don't care if they don't take over. I want whoever is in charge to be able to pay the bills. Like you said, pay the bills, file the paperwork, file the lawsuits, do the party stuff. and stay as not dramatic as humanly possible, and let the candidates be the ones getting the attention. Let the candidates and the activists and the people that are out there doing the actual work that brings people in. No one is going to be brought in by how impressively you file Form X2Z75. No one cares.
Yeah, it's absolutely fucking mind-blowing. And like, to take it a step further, like, I supported the Mises Caucus takeover. It's not a fucking takeover. It's longstanding members of the party running for internal office in most cases.
And I understand that. I understand that.
But like the language, I told them from the beginning I didn't like their language. Hell, for the long time, I was one of the biggest critics of the Mises Caucus because of the way they went about things. It wasn't until things started to like, it wasn't until the Pragmatic Caucus and the members of the Prag Caucus just stopped doing anything in my home state, and our state chair just kind of waffled off into nowhere and like wouldn't answer messages or do anything, that I started to go to the meetups with the Mises Caucus, because I'm like, oh, you guys are actually doing stuff. Oh, you guys are actually running local like petitions and doing local sticker campaigns and doing stuff that the party's not doing. And like, and then somebody's like, yeah, I think I'm going to run for vice chair of the party. I'm like, I'll support you. I'll help you. All I actually did to help them was I went to a Mises Caucus meetup before the LPNH convention, and I gave them a 5-minute primer on Robert's Rules of Order. And when...
Oh, this was your colluding thing that I...
Yeah.
You colluded with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I got accused of colluding because I gave them a 5-minute primer on Robert's Rules of Order to 3 lifetime members of the party who had been in the party longer than I had.
You son of a bitch.
And they took over the party from people who, by the way, the people they replaced didn't even show up to the convention to run for re-election. So, and it was a big catastrophe. Everybody says the Mises Caucus was super offensive and inappropriate when they voted Noda over Nick Sarwark for treasurer. But I'll tell you what, the Mises Caucus might have been about 40% of the delegates, and 82% voted Noda.
Oh, also, so I talk about this a lot. I've been to conventions in some of the smaller states, but I've been into conventions where Mises took over. They won all this. They won their slate won with like 50 people showing up on their side. And that's great. That's great that they were able to do that. But this isn't they brought 5,000 people. It's not even they brought 500 people. I think they brought, 300 and something in Pennsylvania. But most of these states, they're winning with dozens of people, maybe as much as 100 to 150 people, usually less than 100 people. Mm-hmm. If no one else is able to organize well enough to get 60 people to show up, then again, this is democracy. The people that whoever organized and brought the most people wins. And it is what it is. And you know, like I said, whoever is in charge, do whatever that job is, and identify and help empower good candidates and activists to do what actually needs to get done to spread liberty, because it's not going to come from us playing some, form filing game. Like, no one is like, man, I was going to vote Republican this year, but then I heard that the Libertarian Party filed a lawsuit. And I read that sucker, and if there wasn't a single error in it, it was perfectly filed. I'm now a libertarian. No one cares. No one knows or cares. All they care about is the people that are out there, the front-facing people. What are they saying? What are their solutions?
I will say we did get at least a handful of people that I know that joined the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire because of our lawsuit against Chris Sununu, the governor, during the lockdown, that had to do with the petitions. But it wasn't about that it was filed. It wasn't about how it was like processed. It wasn't even the fact that we won. It's that when the transcript of the trial was released, when I was being cross-examined by the state's attorney, I called him an idiot to his face, and in the notes is Judge LaPlante laughing.
And also when I was talking about lawsuits, I meant like ballot access lawsuits and stuff like that. What the party did there is newsworthy. You're suing to stop an actual policy, the one that's being the most hotly contested. Obviously something like that, yes. But there shouldn't be, I would hope that just as a standard baseline, that no one that we would seriously consider to be in charge of any state party or affiliate wouldn't do that same thing. That to me seems like the absolute baseline. And if there is anyone out there who's like, oh no, the party shouldn't sue over that, then they shouldn't be seriously considered. I don't care what party, faction they're in. I don't care any of that. If they're not willing to do that, then that's just a baseline thing that they should be doing. So one of the most effective forms of activism I have ever heard of, like ever,
like in the history of the Libertarian Party, seen accomplished wasn't suing somebody. It was forcing someone to sue them. It was doing something so egregious that it forced the state and forced agents of the state to sue the Libertarian Party. And the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire wanted to lose the case because they wanted to set the precedent against what they did.
Right.
It was after the Kelo case in Connecticut, eminent domain for private purchase and private gain. At the time, Justice Souter of the Supreme Court, who was the deciding vote in the Kelo case, like in favor of eminent domain, owned 2 ranches in New Hampshire. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire filed for eminent domain on his ranches to build the Lost Liberty Hotel.
See, that stuff I love. I like that stuff. That's the stuff I like.
Within 48 hours, the House had met in a special session and passed a constitutional amendment to ban eminent domain in New Hampshire.
That's the stuff I like. That doesn't just win the PR battle. You actually won a policy battle with exactly 0 elected. Well, no, you had how many?
At that time, we had about 11 state reps.
Out of how many?
So, 400.
Okay, so slightly more than 0 elected officials in the state house, and you were able to get them to pass a constitutional amendment, which means that's not going away.
Right. It's incredible. And just 2 years ago, we got a constitutional amendment passed by working with legislators in different parties. Libertarians went to lobby Republicans and Democrats in New Hampshire to pass a constitutional amendment protecting individual privacy from state surveillance and giving every taxpayer in the state standing to sue the state over spending.
Yep, which is why I tell people we need to be doing this stuff. We need to be doing this in state legislatures. We need to be doing this stuff. We don't have the wherewithal to do it in Congress yet, but we do have the wherewithal to do it in state legislatures and certainly in city councils and in county councils. There's another example of this at the state level. In Tennessee, 2 former ex-con members of the Libertarian Party of Tennessee, Josh Eckel and Justin Cornett, started a group called For All Tennessee. And they went to the, I don't know, Capitol Hill, whatever they call it there, the state legislature there. And they just started making friends and pushing for stuff. They have a budget of nothing, they were pulling out of their own pocket to pay for them to drive there and back. They weren't, padding anyone's pockets. They were just going there and having conversations. They were able to get the state legislature to pass a ban on no-knock raids. Almost, I believe, either unanimously or almost unanimously, but they got no-knock raids. They ended police chokeholds. They got a felony legal duty to intervene for police officers, and they've greatly restricted civil asset forfeiture. Now, all civil asset forfeiture cases, they have to assign a public defender to anyone who wants to fight to get their stuff back, which means that the vast majority of seizures aren't worth it anymore because it's going to cost more to hire a defender to be able to do it. 2 people, a budget of whatever couple $1,000 they spent, were able to do that in a state that was not friendly to criminal justice reform and police reform. So Harrison Kemp
has been doing it in Maine by himself with no budget, just making the friends and getting stuff done. I just on days I have off, I drive to the New Hampshire State House and I don't have plans going in there. I just when I get there, I see what the schedule, what bills are in committee today, grab a copy, read it, and say, I'm going to give my opinion on this to the committee because we have public testimony on legislation in New Hampshire. And I'll spend a whole day on a day off just yelling at state reps up there. Over the past few years, it's gotten to the point where about 300 of the 400 of them know my name. About 100 of them have my cell phone number. And 2 weeks ago, the deadline to submit new legislation for the upcoming session, one of them, who I've never gotten along with, someone who I've openly criticized, belittled, and campaigned against and helped run opposition campaigns against him, approached me to help him write a bill opening up healthcare access in New Hampshire.
Yeah, these people are not Sauron. So, I think because we see what happens at the federal level and how it is almost like Sauron there, we think it's the same way at the state level. And sometimes it can be on certain things. But on a lot of stuff, they're just trying to figure out what the hell they want to do. And there may not be a vested interest in it. We can go in and just, basically a combination of gentle nudging and bullying. We can talk them into this stuff and be able to give them a win. And then we can turn around and say, look what libertarians are able to do with, little to no elected officials in office there. Imagine how much more we can do when we actually are in there. And candidates who want to run on that message, including some of the people who are out doing it themselves, can now run on that. oh, you've never been elected to office. No, I didn't have to be. I just showed up and talked to them and look at all the stuff I've gotten accomplished.
Right.
And now if you vote for me, I'll be right in there voting on it too. And if they don't pass stuff, we can turn around, and anytime they don't pass something that we wanted, or they pass something we didn't want, we can turn around and say, look, they say they're going to do one thing and they do the other. The only way this is ever going to happen is if you elect libertarians to replace them. Either way, we win. Right? This is what you do when you show up and do immediate action. That matters to me exponentially more than who is the chair, vice chair, secretary, whatever else. I have opinions about those things. I just don't care about it nearly as much as I do about you doing that in New Hampshire, and Harrison doing it in Maine, and Justin and Josh doing it in Tennessee, and everyone else that's doing it across the country.
Yeah, and one thing I want to encourage people to do is like be the nonpartisan bridge in your state legislature as a constituent rather than as a rep, because like a lot of the times I look and I see we have a massive thriving Liberty Republican caucus here in New Hampshire. No less than 4 members of the Liberty Republican caucus, elected Republican state reps, are dues-paying members of LPNH. No less than 4 other ones are Mises caucus members. But they're partisan Republicans because that's how they got elected, and they haven't changed it. While we don't have ballot access, they're not going to change. Yep. I look through the bills, and there is such a stark divide between Republican and Democrat because of the nature of politics and how everything's become so politicized today. Right. That there's maybe 1 or 2 of 1,200 bills for the next session. There's 1 or 2 bipartisan bills. Nothing to speak of is bipartisan. So the other night I started going through all the Democrat bills, just seeing what did they miss? There's a Democrat who submitted a bill to end mandatory vehicle registration for non-commercial vehicles in New Hampshire. No Republican or Liberty co-sponsor. There's a Democrat who submitted a bill
because they're so partisan they didn't even look at it. Wow.
Right. There's a Democrat submitted a bill to eliminate subsidies for coal and gas in New Hampshire and unrestrict nuclear, which is a pet issue of mine. And it's not even green energy subsidies. It's just let the market compete. I'm like, yes. A Democrat submitted a bill to impose criminal penalties on police officers who interfere with citizens recording them on duty.
And the Republicans aren't even looking at this because they're Democrats.
Correct.
So you can be that bridge to be like, hey, guys, look at this thing that you guys like. You already have co-sponsors, or you can be the co-sponsor on this thing that's already part of your agenda, and maybe you can actually get it passed. And it takes this nonpartisan arbiter to step in or at least nonpartisan for those 2 parties to step in and be like, hey, see this thing? No, I love it. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, it's something I think people can do in any state because your legislators are acceptable. In most states, your state legislature cell phone number is on the website. You can call them. In some states like New York or California, where they're special people, they might not be. But here in New Hampshire, their home addresses are I got one that lives down the street. I can go knock on his door, and he expects people to knock on his door because he's our state rep. I was trying to get in touch with a state rep in Wyoming a couple years ago for a bill I was working in regards to Medicare that was a national bill, and I couldn't get in contact with them, couldn't find a Twitter. I went to the website. Oh, here's a cell phone number. Call them. It's really simple to get in touch with state legislators. They're accessible. They're mostly normal people.
And so many of these people are gearing up to go to Congress or to become a statewide official, a governor, secretary of state, attorneys general. They're trying to work their way, or some other state, commissioner or whatever. Most of them are positioning themselves either for federal office, statewide office, or leadership within the state legislature, right? So these are the future people that are going to be the big dogs. Go make friends with them. Go try to, work out things with them. And yes, making friends can also mean sometimes yelling. We yell at our friends, right? You can, it doesn't mean you be nice to them all the time. It just means you develop that rapport where they know that you're always going to give it to them straight. And then you can end up getting some things accomplished. Like I said, I tell many people, the state legislatures are not sore on. Even in some of the bigger states, they're not sore on. And you can find many allies there, at least on specific issues. And if nothing else, you can use them as a foot in the door to build a rapport with people there, and another foot of the door with the public to say, look what libertarians are doing, and we have no one here. We have it's just us showing up as private citizens. Imagine what we could do if you elect XYZ to this seat, or if you elect, Jim Smith, Betty Jackson, whatever, elect them to these spots. That's how we can win. It's a great way to do it, and do it at the city and county level as well.
Yeah. Speaking of like city level, local politics is where libertarians, I think, are most effective. Yep. There's a story to tell. So Wednesday night, I have a gentleman named Ben Clemens coming on the show. He's a Democrat alderman in the city of Nashua, New Hampshire. Okay. And he's coming on to talk about a particular instance that happened a couple years ago when the city of Nashua was trying to raise the smoking age to 21. Before Trump did it by executive order, the city was trying to do it. And a couple small business owners in the city were like desperate for help and trying to reach out to people for help because they own cigar shops. And it likely would have put them out of business because a cigar shop on exit 1 right over the Massachusetts border with no sales tax is a lot of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in the military who are stationed at Fort Devens coming to buy their cigars that aren't sold at the PX. And so like it would have desperately put them out of business. And so they were desperate and like worried about what was going on. And the city was trying to do this hush hush undercover, didn't advertise it. If it weren't for my friend AJ Olding, who happened to be going there, he just happened to be going to a alderman meeting because there was a bill about backyard chickens becoming legalized that he was interested in. He wouldn't have seen it on the agenda, told everyone about it, gotten 40 libertarians to show up to the next city council meeting. And the mayor, seeing the packed room, says, oh, I see there's a lot of people in support of the smoking ban here tonight, and then had to sit through 35 people in a row testifying in opposition to the smoking ban to watch it fail by one vote as that alderman changed his mind and was swayed by libertarian testimony.
Wow, and that's a perfect example. These people aren't used to people showing up. I was just in Russell, Kentucky the week before last. Okay, and I don't know if you've been following it, but we've been talking about a lot on my social media. Basically, long story short, a city council in Russell, Kentucky is using eminent domain to seize a privately owned convalescent home with 28 low income or sometimes no income elderly and mentally disabled residents. And basically all the city council members many of the city council members and the city attorney own homes and businesses all around this thing. They want it gone. It's going to have more, to have a parking lot there and to revitalize the city core or whatever. And they're just basically stealing this property legally. And so we showed up. I've been talking about it on social media, and I posted about it a couple times, and we showed up. We had about 30, 40 libertarians showed up, many of whom live in that city. And we came up, we came and we talked, and I let them know. And this was the thing that I think they weren't ready for. I said, we're just getting started. This isn't the end of this. It's the beginning unless you change your mind. And I tried to get them to sympathize with the people and said, because I was sitting in between residents. And I said, these are residents. And I gave their names, Carl and John or Rob and Carl. And I forget the lady's name there. But I said, this man's already preparing himself. Actually, I left him to tell that story. Next time he's going to tell his story about he's already putting all of his belongings in his walker to re-prepare himself for what homelessness is like. Imagine if that were you, that was happening. So I was trying to appeal to their human side. You're all going home. Imagine what it's like if you knew someone's trying to steal your home to build a parking lot and there's nothing you can do about it. But I also let them know we're just getting started. Next time, a couple hundred people will show up and we'll have even more locals. And this time we'll have the residents talk and we'll have even more media because a bunch of local media showed up. We'll have even more media show up. And those people were shook. And we're already trying to reach out privately to, or I guess not privately, but not, on Facebook Live, reaching out to some of the elected officials there, some of the city council members to say, there's got to be a better way to do this. You can probably work out a deal with the convalescent home instead of stealing it from them. And, but that happens when people show up.
Yeah, people really underestimate the value of showing up. It's Nick Sarwark's famous last words: "The Libertarian Party belongs to the people who show up."
Those who show up. Yep.
It doesn't just apply to the Libertarian Party. It applies to your city council.
Everything.
It applies to your town meeting. It applies to your budget committee. It applies to your school board. It belongs to the people who show up.
Yeah, it is. And this is where libertarians have difficulty sometimes because we don't. So it belongs to people who show up because it's a democratic system. And we don't like that. We like merit-based, stakeholder-based, philosophically based, if we have a system set up, abiding by those rules that have been, contractually agreed upon. That's not how our power structures are set up. Our power structures are currently set up by who can bring the most people to rally for this thing, whatever it is, whatever that thing is. Who can get the most people to show up? That's also true at the federal level. Yes, it's the cronies operating things from the top, but what are the cronies doing? They're using media to convince people to show up to support this thing. It's all about democracy.
Yep.
We hate it. It makes our skin crawl. But the only way we're going to dismantle this thing is by using, on the electoral level, yes, we need to be using agorism. We need to be using market-based solutions. That's why I love crypto and DeFi and the blockchain and the crypto anarchists that are building this prefigurative non-state society without waiting for the state to crumble first. I love all of that. To whatever extent we are using the electoral process for harm reduction and to get libertarians into office to try to unroll some of this stuff, we have to just organize by getting people to get excited on an emotional level by what our solutions are, by connecting with them on the things they care about, and that gets people to show up. We got to get a bunch of people to show up. That's like you said, and it's the smartest thing Nick Sarwark's ever said. The party belongs to those who show up.
Yeah, one of the things that I did really hate to see, as someone who I help run social media for the Free State Project. I volunteer for the Free State Project a lot. I'm not a Free Stater. I didn't move for the Free State Project, but I attend most of their events. Most of my friends are Free Staters, and someone who's been in the leadership of the Libertarian Party and been on the board of the LNC and run for office as a Libertarian has been seeing the divide and the real hostile divide in the past few years between the Free State Project and the Libertarian Party, when people like Jeremy Kauffman and Nick Sarwark start getting into very public debates about practice and policy and how things are done. And I look at it, I've come to the realization, I think one of the reasons why the Free State Project has been so successful as compared to the Libertarian Party in just 15 years of the Free State Project versus 50 years of the Libertarian Party, the Free State Project has had leaps and bounds more success. And I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with principles. I don't think it has to do with libertarian concentration and just having the numbers, because we still are a minority here in New Hampshire. We are not a majority. I think it just has to do with the structure of activism and how we structure what we do, because the Libertarian Party governs itself with rules. Everybody has to follow the rules. Everyone has their assigned place. You have your title, your role, and your job, and you do that and nothing else. And the Free State Project, I don't know if anybody who has ever read Salkvich's Swarmwise, but they practice it natively.
Yep. The Pirate Party.
Yeah,
yep.
You get, like, the Free State Project operates on a principle of you get 3 people who want to do a thing, go do it. Yep. Don't ask for permission. Swarmwise. Just go do it.
That alone is Swarmwise. And just, I'm glad you brought this up, because I talk to people about it and they go, what the hell is the Pirate Party? So the Pirate Party is it was a Swedish party, and it doesn't even exist. It's not even trying to actively run candidates anymore, because it doesn't have to. Every single one of their goals has largely been accomplished. Every major party, not just in Sweden, but in all of the EU, every major party has adopted what their platform policies were specific to issues on anti-piracy laws, IP, and peer-to-peer sharing and Tor networks and Tor nodes and all of that stuff. They literally got them all to do it. And it was on the model of, you excite people by saying, here is our goal, here is how we can do it, now come join us and we can do it. It was very, very decentralized. And it was also based on bringing people in. And like you said, the beauty of the 3 people thing, the beauty of the rule of 3 is that if you have an organization that's trying to pass a specific goal, let's say you're trying to make your state a Second Amendment sanctuary state, for example, and instead of using the model of we're going to make the Americans for a second sanctuary state, or New Hampshireans or whatever state you're in for a Second Amendment sanctuary state, we're going to have a president and a vice president. Whatever. No, we are called the South Carolinians for a second. I'll use South Carolina because we have the worst gun laws in the freaking South, but some of the worst in the country. And so we create the organization, but the organization has a handful of people that started it, and come and join us. Here are our goals. If you have the same goals as us, come and join us. And if any 3 of you want to try something, go do it. The beauty of that is if we have South Carolinians who are not libertarians, they're, leftist, Marxist, Black Panther types, but they want to use messaging for that group and that community on why we need to be a Second Amendment sanctuary, then they can go do that. And if there are these people over here who are hardcore Republicans who want to reach out to people on that, then they can go do that. Everyone can go and do however they want to do it, whenever they want to do it, instead of having to say, no, we have to decide as a committee how we're going to do stuff. At best, it's slow, and at worst, it actively hampers things from happening.
Yeah, I think the way Falkfish said it was the beauty of a leaderless movement being more successful than organization. It's when you don't have leaders, people aren't looking to someone to tell them what to do. They just do it. And it's this, I don't know if you're familiar with the game Magic the Gathering. There's an
I'm familiar with it. I haven't played it, but I'm familiar with it.
There's an old card from Magic the Gathering called Anarchist, and it has some of the best flavor text. The old cards had flavor text, just quotes from old books and plays, Shakespearean era literature that met the flavor of the card and the story of the game. And the card Anarchist, the flavor text just says, "Those who refuse to follow are doomed to lead." And to me, that's the beauty of the mentality of Swarmwise.
Yeah, the swarm is just it's one of many different forms of spontaneous order. It's voluntary association. It's people that are like, all right, we all want to do this thing, which is why we're associated, but you've got your way of doing it. Great. I've got my way of doing it. Great. You've got your way of doing it. Great. Oh, wow. Your way of doing it. That sounds kind of cool. Can I help with that? Or, you know what? I really don't like that way of doing it. I'm not a fan of that. I'm going to go do it this way, which is why when people come to me and they're like, did you know that the Libertarian Party of Kentucky or New Hampshire or Pennsylvania, Nevada, whatever, did you know they did this? I go, that is terrible. What do you want to do? Like, what would you like to do instead? And if it sounds good, let's go do that. Or that's terrible. Here's what I'm doing. Like, there's a point where we can certainly criticize people. We can certainly want to have different people in charge in a certain thing. But at some point, there also has to come not waiting for that thing to happen. I'm not going to wait for the perfect libertarian leadership at the LNC, because like I said, I have my opinion on who should be in what position, but I'm not going to wait for my preferred whatever that looks like. Even if we had it now, I'm not going to wait for that before I go and try to spread liberty, because there are people today who are in prison over a plant. There are people today who are in a camp because they were born on this side of the line. There are people today whose lives are being ruined by these vaccine mandates and these the threat of future lockdowns and everything else. There are people whose lives are being actively ruined, and all of us are suffering to various degrees as a result of this ever-growing state, and it's never going to stop until we do the action to stop it. And I'm much more interested in that than some stupid internal power struggle.
Yeah, so you're sounding pretty black-pilled on the LP. Joining me
No.
On the current
who's in charge.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. On the current
Kerry
incarnation of the LP. And as well, so one of the things, you've been one of the earliest members of the Mises Caucus, but you've also been like kind of the crown of the unity movement in the LP. Not even like leading, not even saying anything overtly, just the fact that everyone in the Mises loved you, all the Prags loved you, the Vermin people loved you. Like you were what could be held up as the crux of unity. And it wasn't until after the whole LPNH debacle when you just said something about follow the fucking process, and people started to fall apart. And
and I said I hated those tweets. That's the other thing I said. I've been very clear. I mean, there's been no love lost between me and Jeremy Coffin. I'm not a fan of most of those tweets. I'm not a fan of it. I didn't like it. You can't steal the damn party like that. And that's what I've said. I said it to some of the principals that were involved in it. I said, this was the worst way to do it possible. If your goal was to distract from the stuff that you were upset about and make sure everyone's talking about what you did instead, mission accomplished, fantastic job. So that was my whole thing with that. I am not going to push, and I never have pushed, forced unity. Hey guys, even though you hate each other, you have to work together. I don't say that. What I say is maybe take a step back and get some context on why you hate this person. Because it might turn out that it's over some stupid argument instead of an actual substantive thing. But if you can't get over it, great. Go do your own thing and go make it work. And maybe they'll join you. And so I still believe in unity to the extent that I think that we would be much more unified if we focused more on doing stuff. I'm very much a believer in idle hands are a devil's plaything, clearly, because I'm never not doing something. And I think that I think that what's happening is very often people end up nesting because they're not being given something effective to do. I think the reason that Mises has been so effective is they're giving people something to do. They're like, and that thing might just be show up to this event and listen to Scott Horton or listen to Dave Smith or whatever. It might be, hey, show up and let's Noda Nick Sarwark. Whatever it is, it's, hey, let's go do a thing. And people are like, yes, let's do things. Give people something to do, and they're going to want to do it. And they're going to be less likely to nest and blame and attack and find something to bicker over and nitpick. Go do stuff. Let's go do things.
You know what the craziest thing about the Noda of Nick Sarwark was? I had done the work because before the convention, a couple months before the convention, the old treasurer had said he wasn't going to run. He was moving, had just built a new house, and got promoted at work, and so he didn't have the time to be treasurer anymore, and he didn't want to run. Valerie Sarwark had told me she was going to run for treasurer. She had even told me that she had lined up someone to be an advisor for crypto, because we're New Hampshire. We deal with a lot of cryptocurrency, but a good number of our members pay their dues in cryptocurrency every month.
Right.
And I had gone to that Mises meetup to give them Robert's Rules Primer and tell them how convention works. And I had convinced them to vote for Valerie Sarwark for treasurer. And in fact, in the Mises Caucus group chat, they were whipping votes for Valerie Sarwark because they wanted to show that it wasn't just a takeover, that they were willing to work with the old guard, just not Nick. And when Valerie was nominated, she declined the nomination and nominated Nick, and even the old guard voted against him.
I am convinced that Nick Sarwark, and I can't figure out why yet. I have a couple theories, but I am convinced. And I like Nick. Like, I get along with Nick. I just saw Nick a couple weeks ago in Pennsylvania. I like Nick personally. I don't agree with him on. There's quite a few things I don't agree with him on, but I don't dislike Nick. Put it that way. I consider him a friend. I get along with Nick. I am convinced that Nick wants Mises to take over because, you know, like the old Bugs Bunny cartoons where he'd draw a line in the sand and go, "Don't step past this line," and then what's not Foghorn Leghorn, Yosemite Sam would go, "I'm a steppin'," and he'd step across the line, and then Bugs Bunny would draw another line in the sand and say, "Don't step past this line," and Yosemite Sam would say, "I'm a steppin'." I feel like Nick Sarwark keeps saying, "You wouldn't dare do this, Mises Caucus," and Mises Caucus goes, we absolutely would do it," and then they go and do it, and in doing so take over, and he keeps doing that, and I'm sure that Nick believes that he's leading them off to a cliff in the process of them taking over. I just don't know what that thing is, unless he's a secret Mises lover and he actually wants them to take over and he's playing whatever it is. I can't believe that this very intelligent man who for years has been saying, "You wouldn't dare do this. There's no way you'd ever do this. In fact, I double dog dare you to do it. The party is made of those who show up." And then they go and do it. And he goes, "Well, you wouldn't dare do this. I'm certain of it." Like, I feel like, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. You know Nick probably better than me. It feels like he wants them to take over. Am I wrong? Am I completely off?
I don't know, but like, as far as knowing him, like at this window right here, if I were to turn my camera, you could see his car. But like, that's how close we live.
Right.
I don't know, because like after the New Hampshire thing, everyone was like, "Nick did this. Nick was involved in this." And I was like, guys, I don't think so. This was really fucking sloppy and stupid. I got a lot of problems with Nick, but I'll never say he's incompetent. And
that's what I'm saying. He's a smart guy.
If Nick was involved in New Hampshire, I'm pretty sure it would have been harder for us to get it back. He knows the rules and he knows how the system works. Right. And then, but like, I don't know if it's just Nick or if it's the Prags in general. I don't know if they think just accelerating the Mises takeover will burn the whole thing to the ground on their way out. I don't know. Because I thought it was settled. I thought after the LPNH thing got settled, that was it. The Pragmatic Caucus dissolved. People waved their white flag. They gave up. I'm like, this is it. It's okay. We'll see what happens in Reno. Then they fucking go after Karen Ann. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Why are you going after Karen Ann? Do you want there to be a bloodbath in Reno? Do any of you want to get reelected in Reno? Because you're giving her the opportunity to play a martyr. And the one thing she'll better at than being secretary of the Libertarian Party is being a martyr. Like, you are giving the Mises Caucus the best recruiting material in the world leading up to Reno. And then after they did that, I'm like, okay, it can't get worse. And then Massachusetts started expelling members for liking Jeremy Kauffman's tweets. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? It's just going to make it worse. And I'm like, it can't get worse than this. And then this week, the Libertarian Party of Delaware, two county chairs decided to get together, change the bylaws, and expel the whole everyone else that disagreed with them. And when they wrote up the charges were literally associates with a national faction caucus. Like they expelled them.
And there were a couple other things in there that they were being abusive or whatever. And so I will say, I don't know much about the Massachusetts thing. I know that they expelled people because they retweeted something offensive or something like that, but I don't know the inner details. Delaware, I know is slightly more. I know basically the allegations that were made, and I know that they changed the rule from 8 board members to 2 county chairs can remove people from the XCOM, basically.
But there's only 3 counties.
That's what I'm saying. So it's 2. It's 2. They said from 4/5 to 2/3. Well, it's 4/5 of board members, which would be 8, to 2/3 of county chairs, which would be 2. So 2 people voted to remove 3 people. And so, but I'm saying this because I don't want to. I have said I am waiting to see, because they've said that there is more than enough extraordinary evidence to prove that this was necessary, that there was no other way to do this, and that it absolutely had to be done. And I've said, fantastic, let me see it. And their response was, well, we can't show it to you. Or they said it's out there, you can see it. And I said, great. Do you have a link to it? They said, no. I said, is there a link that you can show me? And they literally said, there is not. And I said, why? Why is that not? So I am holding out. I'm being as even-handed and fair as I can on this. Also, it's not my state, so it's ultimately it's something they're going to work out. I am holding out because to go from to inside of the span of 5 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever, to declare the chair, vice chair, and Newcastle County chair absent, to change the rules from 8 board members to 2 county chair. 2 county chairs can remove people, and then immediately to remove 3 people and replace them with. I mean, it was an extraordinary action. It was a far out of the ordinary action, and as I said, you need to have extraordinary evidence that this was necessary, and it needs to be widely disseminated so that the inevitable dissension and discord and turmoil that's going to come from it can be at the very least blunted by showing them the facts of why this absolutely had to happen, could not be done any other way, and was absolutely necessary. They could not wait till the next convention to decide who the next thing is. I hope to see that. I have not seen it, and I was told that there are not links to it. And that
Did you see the statement remove chair?
I did. I read that. Yeah. I read this from Bill Hines. Yeah.
If there's even a grain of truth to his statement there, it completely undoes everything that the 2 county chairs did, because their argument was that he couldn't run a meeting and he was abusive to members. But like his claim is, we called the meeting to order. They immediately motioned to adjourn. We didn't accomplish anything for a year because they refused to work with us.
Yeah. And again, I am because right now it's a he said, she said thing. But what concerns me is on the he said, she said, Bill's accusations don't actually have to be true, because he didn't remove anyone.
Right.
He's just saying, no, that's not what happened. The burden of proof here is on the people who actually took this action to demonstrate that it's necessary. So I'm not even trying to weigh in on, Bill's accusation, if those are true or not. I guess actually it's part of it, because if they have evidence, then he needs to provide evidence that what their evidence says isn't true and all of that. But as for right now, it doesn't matter, because no evidence has been presented. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that it needs to be shown, and it needs to be widely disseminated. If I were the in charge of the South Carolina Libertarian Party, and there were members who were everything that the LP Delaware said, that they were disruptive and they were abusive and that they had ulterior motives and all this other stuff,
document it. Document it.
And I said there was no other way to do this. We could not wait until the next convention. I need to remove them now, and I even need to change the rules in order to be able to remove them. Before I even did that thing, I would put it out there and say, here is what I have to do, and here is why I have to do it. And if you have to remove me, and if I have to fall on the sword, I'll fall on the sword. But here's why I had to do it, and here you can decide for yourself. And then I'd let the chips fall where they may if I had to do that. And that's concerning. So,
and you know what? At least in New Hampshire, Gilletta collected a folder of evidence, and was willing to fall on her sword. Her evidence was garbage. Nobody believed the evidence justified what she did, and she fell on the sword. But at least she documented her reasoning as to why she thought she had to do what she did.
Yep. I want to see the evidence. It's very
Yeah.
concerning. And then take it out of that, because if I'm the head of the South Carolina party and the people that are doing this, let's say the people that were doing, and again, these are all hypotheticals on I'm not saying any of this is true, but let's say that it was a similar situation in my state where the Mises caucus members are being so abusive and disruptive, and I know that they're rising across the country. So not only do I need to consider the immediate implications of what I'm doing, I have to consider the political implications. Is what I'm going to do just going to spur them on to take over even faster? Because if I know that this has to be done, again, I'm assuming that this has to be done. These are abusive people. They are bad actors. They should not be in there. Every day that they're in there is a threat to the constitution of the state affiliate itself. If that is the case, then I have to put it out there, and if for no other reason, not just to cover my ass, but also to say, and this is why you should not be responding by taking over. They were bad actors. It had to be done. If I don't do that, not only am I going to get removed, but the takeover is going to happen even faster, right? So I mean, it's just we need to see the evidence. It needs to be disseminated. Otherwise, it is almost inevitably going to lead to Mises fully taking over, including those 2 counties.
Everything entirely. They're crossing the line. Don't draw a line in the sand if you don't want someone to cross it, I guess. All right. Well, it's been now. Let's go to the comments. We do have a few comments from YouTube. People had stuff to point out. MD early on, in the private sector, we build playbooks around crisis communications. It's typically decentralized across a number of groups to get the message out to customers as quick as possible. Exactly.
That.
My academic background is emergency management and homeland security. I helped write the playbook to decentralize FEMA. They did it for a little bit, but then they went backwards. So, unfortunately, TJ says in regards to Dan's video, or just kick him a fee of $2,000. I don't know what the going rate is for that level of work, but leaving the rest for immediate distribution.
Oh, are you talking about Dan Smott? I'm not.
Dan's video.
Probably not much more than that. Honestly, that would probably, especially if it were an ongoing thing, that would probably be a fair rate. I don't want to speak on behalf of Dan for what his rates are, but I would say whatever his rate is going to be fair. I mean, the man is doing stuff that if he were doing it for the major parties, he'd be making 6 figures a year on retainer, just constantly pumping out stuff. The fact that this man wants nothing to do with them and instead wants to be involved with us is a freaking blessing from whatever deity you do or don't believe in. Something must be up there, because Dan Smolt's out here and producing this stuff. Whatever his fee is, I know it is very reasonable, and put the rest out for the cost of distribution.
And if you guys aren't following Dan, everyone watching, go to the System Is Down podcast. He's kind of shadow banned on YouTube, so you have to search the whole thing, the System Is Down podcast. But he's also on YouTube. His content is incredible, and he's definitely worth a follow. Mariah Jazz, okay, but how does Spike feel about the future of emo and pop punk?
These are things I know absolutely. I know they exist. I don't know a thing about them. I just hope that they all have a good time. I'm going to talk like the parent. I'm going to talk like the parent that's at the baseball game and doesn't know anything. I just hope everyone has a good time. Anytime I see him do something, I'm going to say good hustle.
Mariah, if you want to have a conversation about emo and pop punk, you need to get in touch with Caitlin. And you can do that usually by following Spike on Twitter. We do have some comments on Odyssey. I'm not going to bring them up. It's just Rabbi Isaac Goldstein demanding that we display our fealty for Israel and support more federal funding for Israel. And we need to protect our priorities. This is who we are. Americans need to support Israel. So, yeah. Odyssey's an odd bunch.
Call me a bad Jew. Call me a bad Jew.
All right. It's been a great night. It's been a great show. Spike, where can people follow you? Learn more.
So me personally, you got it right there, @Real Spike Cohen. I'm Spike Cohen. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok for the kids. And if I get enough followers, I'll actually start producing something there. I'm so scared of TikTok. And I need to find like a college student in the area who can like show me how to use TikTok, and then I'll finally start producing stuff there. Muddied Waters Media is where all my podcasts are. I am on live on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You can go to muddywatersmedia.com. Muddy Waters Media is on all social media platforms, all podcasting platforms. And also my personal website for my personal politics is spikecohen.com. Sign up there there's a form if you go to spikecohen.com/first. We are so painfully close to unrolling an absolutely incredible thing. We are just getting started. We are going to set liberty on fire in this country.
All
in a good
right.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's oh man, more comments. I came for smoked salmon sources and recipes. All right,
It's hard
been
now
fun.
because people just literally bring me smoked salmon now. It's like I get offered smoked salmon and weed, and I've been sober for 15 years, so I'm like, you can keep the weed, I'll take the smoked salmon.
There was a suggestion. There was a suggestion somebody had left for me that I should spend this whole time eating dried apricots.
Can we have time for me to tell this story?
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Okay. Yeah. So when I was campaigning last year, for those who don't know what it's like, imagine you're awake 20 hours a day and you never have time to take care of yourself during that time. You have a limited amount of time to shower and brush your teeth, use the bathroom a couple times, whatever. And the rest of the time, you literally just have people minding that you're getting food, you're getting water, you're getting what you need because you're just in front. You're constantly being interviewed. You're constantly out in front of people. You're front facing for anywhere from 18 to 20 hours a day for months. That's what it was like. So my campaign manager, Matt Hicks, he put together this white paper, this very detailed set of instructions for how my any who was going to be my handler at any place, because there was always a different point of contact, a different runner at each of the locations, what they had to do in order to make sure that I didn't, drop dead or whatever. And I knew this existed, but I didn't know how detailed it was. So for example, one of the things was it said every, I think 10 to 20 minutes, offer Spike a bottle of water by putting it close to him and giving it with the cap on, but with it already opened, but with the cap back on, because apparently I didn't have the wrist strength to open a bottle of water. And so, which is why I was wondering, I remember I'd open it, I'm like, man, this one's already open too. And it was weird. So, because they were full. And so, but I was sleep deprived. I'm constantly busy. I never really had time to think this through. Like, why is this like that? So one of the things is it said to always make sure that I had dried fruit at all times. And the first thing it listed, probably in alphabetical order, was apricots. So everyone that's looking at this ridiculous list of things, they're like, apricots. Okay. I ate so many freaking apricots last year, like probably 10 pounds of apricots. And everywhere I'm going, someone's shoving water in my face and apricots. And I'm like, man, these people are incredible. I got water. And then I remember thinking a couple times, there's got to be a bumper crop on apricots or something, that there's just everywhere I go, people have apricot. Maybe this is some new trend during the pandemic, apricot TikTok challenge or something. And it was just everyone. I'm like, I've never eaten so many apricots in my life. And then a few months ago, I was talking with members of my team and they're like, well, yeah, like the apricots. And I'm like, you mean like how everyone was giving me apricots? And they're like, yeah, do you know why? And I'm like, no. And they shared that white paper with me and I looked at it. I'm like, oh, that. And there was so much stuff on there. The poor people that had to be my handlers and runners at these locations. And it was necessary to have someone doing stuff because I didn't have time to go and get water or to get food. It was that intense, but they didn't have to do it every 20 minutes. And I have the wrist strength to open a bottle of water and all that. So, but it was funny how like, it made sense why people were treating me like I was a child and, handing me snacks and stuff all day long. It was hilarious. So yes, if you had eaten dried apricots, that would have been a perfect segue into that.
Yeah, no, I do. I have a suggestion box and I ask my patrons and subscribers things they want me to ask guests ahead of the interviews. And it was like a week ago when I built the thumbnail and started promoting you coming on. People are like, just make sure you're eating dried apricots the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm like, the fuck? Caitlin explained it to me. I was like, that's incredible. It would have been incredible. I just ate dried apricots.
It would have made me want to go and eat dried apricot. I eat a bunch of apricots because I got like hooked on them during last year. It's incredible.
All right. Well, it's a fucking hilarious story. It's been a great night. Thank you so much again for coming on, Spike. And for everyone watching, again, if you're watching live on YouTube or Odyssey, please hit that subscribe button. Help us grow this channel, grow this community. And If you're listening next day on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I don't know how people started listening on Apple Podcasts. I never promote Apple Podcasts. And then I started getting notifications from them. Like 80% of my listens come from Apple Podcasts. So good on you guys. I don't own an Apple device, so I can't even access it myself to see what's going on.
They might have thought, they saw the thing and they might have been like, oh, Rosie O'Donnell has a podcast. And then but they start listening and they're like, I don't think that's Rosie, but they liked what you said and now they've got you. Yeah.
I think they just rip it from Spotify. Because I don't have an exclusive deal with Spotify. I just upload to Spotify. Right. Yeah. I'm not like Joe Rogan or anything. But yet. Hey, yet. All right. Until next time, everybody, be free. Thanks again for tuning in and joining us tonight. Make sure you hit that like button and leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that big red subscribe button on YouTube and turn on notifications to get alerted every time we go live. If you enjoyed this content, you can join our production team on Patreon by following the link in the description. And don't forget to follow on social media and join our community Discord channel by following the links in the description as well. The best part of all of this is the community that we're building and growing. So go ahead and join us. And thanks once again to our awesome sponsors and patrons for making all of this possible. And if you can't catch the show live, you can always catch it the next day on YouTube, Odyssey, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. So until next time, everybody, be free.